Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're watching Stranger in the House. This is a 2020. Enjoy. Double barrel shotgun. He was screaming and he was upset that he needed an ambulance immediately.
Heidi had been shot in her upper back. She had lost a significant amount of blood. She had no signs of life.
They pronounced Heidi Furcus deceased at the scene.
Nick was transported by St. Paul Fire paramedics fairly quickly down to Regents Hospital, which is one of the level 1 trauma centers in St. Paul.
What was the crime scene like? What did you discover in the house?
There was a pair of jeans laying in the foyer area, and then the shotgun was laying there on the ground as well, right inside the doorway.
The shotgun belongs to Nick. It's his hunting gun. It's a double barrel, and he kept it in the closet of his bedroom for safety.
We also saw the pellets that were in the door frame, as well as the door itself, from when Nick was shot by the intruder.
Officers also photographed what looked like tool marks on the front door along the frame as if someone were trying to jimmy it open.
When a call comes in of somebody that's been shot at 6 in the morning, usually 3 in the morning, we have a massive police response.
Terry responded to see if he could track the suspect from the front door.
Officers and investigators began canvassing the whole area to talk to anybody we can. We began looking for cameras on houses or people out walking their dogs. We're looking for any sign of anything, of someone running away.
Who would do this to this young couple?
Maybe they had an interaction with the intruder back the day before.
The one person that police need to talk to is the lone survivor, the one witness, Nick Curtis.
What did this right here?
There was an intruder trying to burglarize someone?
That's when the struggle took place between Nick and the intruder.
Trying to shut the door shut. He gets forced open.
Nick told us that he began having a fight for his life. We were all looking for that intruder.
Nick and Heidi Furcus were a young, devout couple, members of the Calvary Church. Everybody who knew them knew that their faith was at the center of their lives. Everyone looked up to Nick and Heidi. They both loved Jesus and had their priorities in the right place.
It's a feeling of just like family, like a ton of family. And when you go there, you don't just go to church, you're involved in something.
And Nick and Heidi were both very active in their church, and they each led youth groups, and they would take the kids on these great camping trips through Minnesota.
Minnesota's a land of 10,000 lakes, so it's known for a lot of fishing, hunting, just general outdoor life.
St. Paul is a fantastic place. We are the shadow city to Minneapolis. We're the capital city. The Ferguses lived in the Hamlin Midway neighborhood. It's a safe community with a lot of single-family homes, small businesses, and some local colleges.
I remember when Nick and Heidi bought the house, they were very excited. I wouldn't necessarily call it a fixer-upper, but it also wasn't a beautiful, pristine, no work needed house.
Nick and Heidi had everything going for them.
They were like a picture-perfect couple. They had a very sweet relationship. They were very loving.
The way that he loved Heidi was how I hoped to be loved, very outwardly, and that nothing else really mattered because he had Heidi.
She was always smiling, always joyful, cheerful, and kind of had this mischievous edge to her, but that's what made her fun. She was always joking around with people, and yeah, she had this depth to her.
Nicholas Furcus worked at his family business, kind of subcontracting business that does carpet and various installations, and it's quite successful.
Nick was very much a mentor to me. I wanted to be like him, to try to learn what it meant to man.
On Sunday mornings, Nick and Heidi were found here with friends and family ready to worship. Every Sunday morning, that is, until April 25th, 2010.
I went to church. It was a normal Sunday morning, and I don't even remember who came up in a panic and said Heidi got shot. There was an intruder, and that was about all the information we had. And it was overwhelming, right? Like, you're like, what?
And the news would only get worse. Heidi doesn't make it, and they find out that Nick has been rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound.
The injury that he suffered was from a shotgun blast to the upper thigh.
Nick's injuries did not appear to be life-threatening.
Once Nick was treated at Regents Hospital, the officers escorted him over to our police station. I was waiting there at our homicide office. This up here is our interview room where we talk to some of the victims and witnesses.
Tell me about Nick when he got here. What kind of shape was he in? What was his mind like?
He was in some pain. He was on his crutches, so he was moving fairly slowly. But I wonder who. I told him I wanted to back up at least 24 hours. This is a very trying situation, okay? And I'm just going to try and ease into it, okay? So what I'd like to do is just try and kind of backtrack a little bit, Maybe they had an interaction with somebody, and then the intruder might have maybe met them the day before. My wife was meeting for their house because they were doing American for some shopping. I stayed at home. Nick sent her a message telling her that he wanted to spend time with her alone on Saturday night, and that they ended up watching the movie Avatar. They ordered dinner, and each had a glass of wine while watching the movie. Before you went to bed, did you lock up the house or anything? If I'm honest, I don't know if I ever figured it out.
Nick tells the police the next day that he woke up around 6 in the morning, was thirsty, went to the bathroom, got a drink of water, climbed back into bed, and was starting to fall asleep again. And then he heard something at the front door, which woke him up.
I heard the screen door open, and so I tried to let it go for a while, but then I started hearing feeling hurt. He then goes to the closet to retrieve his shotgun. And then we kept fighting. Okay. And then accidentally, somebody's been with their dad trying to get into our house. Let's get your shoes on and let's go out to the garage. Let's get out of here.
They proceeded to go downstairs.
Heidi's in front of him. He's got a shotgun in the left hand, and he's pushing Heidi along down the stairs.
And as they made the turn to go by the front door towards their kitchen, somebody burst through that front door, and that's when he began having a fight for his life with an intruder.
I don't remember exactly when the gun went off. So I think there was something in the trigger. So, yeah, I didn't know I hit Heidi. I just had no idea.
Do you use the crutches to talk about how this played out?
Yeah, actually, I tried to reenact part of the scene out there at the house, and I picked up the crutch to use as a shotgun as a point of reference for Nick to tell me how he and this intruder started up with a weapon. I get it. Up and over. You pointed at him? No, it was like straight up. So you're like, barrel down. Oh, so the barrel's down.
What did he tell you about this intruder? Did he have a good description?
He thought he was a black male, but was not entirely sure. Who this guy looked like? I think he was a black guy with a dark hooded sweatshirt, but I did not get a good look. Well, he was giving me a little more detailed information than he gave the officers who initially arrived at the scene. But he was really big. Like, whether 6'1", 6'2". So he was that big? He was probably that big, yeah.
He now has a little bit more of a description, which was good for us to go on. In the Hamlin Midway area specifically, there's not a lot of violent crime that goes on in those single-family home areas.
Oh, there's minor crime, certainly. Our garage was broken into a couple of times. Once I left the door open and the guy just came in and stole stuff.
There was one time Heidi had all the girls over and then had a sleepover afterwards. Overnight, one of the girls had her car got broken into.
Who did you hear from neighbors? Were they able to see anything, hear anything?
They weren't able to give us any information about seeing anybody running away from the house or anything like that.
The only thing that was discussed by neighbors was sounds that they heard. The neighbor directly to the west of the property, he heard what he thought was 2 gunshots.
And And that neighbor remembered looking outside and not seeing anybody running away from the scene. We had our canine officers immediately begin trying to scent track the area. Generally, when somebody's running, they're going to emit a lot of sweat and odoring, and our dogs were not able to pick up any scents that day.
Police at the scene and in the neighborhood are coming up short. Meanwhile, downtown at the police station, the interview with Nick Fergus is about to take a surprising turn.
They have to be out by midnight tomorrow.
Was this couple keeping a secret?
No one else knew this except you and assistants. And I was quite shocked hearing that information.
Ordinarily on a Sunday morning, Nick Fergus would be in church. Instead, he's at police headquarters explaining what happened at his house just hours earlier.
Every question that I asked, he answered. There wasn't a time in our conversation where he said, Sergeant Gray, I don't want to answer that question. Okay, how long have you been married for? For 4.5 years. You guys have any problems with like that? It's just stuff, but I would say we're still best friends.
While this break-in and murder is a little strange for the neighborhood, police don't find any red flags in Nick or Heidi's past.
Nick had no criminal history at all whatsoever. Oftentimes, there will be domestic disturbances. There was nothing like that. Got any guy here? Mm-hmm. Every guy's had needs and urges, concerns, how you want to put it. And he said, no, I'll bet you that's to other women. Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, well, yeah, I'm not here to judge you, okay, Nick? Obviously, we had a lot of trust in that part of our relationship, for sure.
But as Detective Gray goes on with the interview, Nick does eventually reveal a secret.
You guys are behind bills at night, which is a little stressful.
In questioning, Nick divulges that they were in some financial trouble.
They were actually getting foreclosed on and have to be moving out the very next day.
The next day, April 26th at noon, the sheriffs were to show up and forcibly remove them.
This is it's a hard place for us. We're foreclosing on our house. Okay, we have to be out by Monday. Tomorrow.
When you step back and you look at the time we're talking about, we begin tonight with the housing crisis.
The nation's foreclosure crisis shows no end in sight.
Nick and Heidi were like a lot of families who were upside down on their mortgage and on the verge of losing their home.
President Obama is expected to unveil his plan for dealing with a surge in foreclosures.
Even though Nick and Heidi's financial troubles weren't exactly unusual at the time, he says they were ashamed.
This has been kind of a private struggle for us. Well, that's kind of close quarters. Because we're both kind of dealing with the shame of the whole thing. Because we're embarrassed that we haven't been able to be honest with our friends about our struggles.
Nick then explains that they also have a lot of credit card debt as well.
Just out of curiosity, what's the total for the credit cards that we're at? Just a little over 15. Okay.
The Ferguses were in dire financial distress. They had a substantial credit card debt, overdrafts in their checking account. They just were living paycheck to paycheck.
Did he give you any indication of whether people knew about it?
No, it was their secret. It was Heidi and Nick's secret that they were getting evicted the very next day. They didn't even disclose any information to either family or friends. Can we talk to everybody about it tomorrow? Actually, took place. See, you and her never mentioned this to either side of parents. None of our parents or none of our friends. No one knows about this except you and assistants. Then I.
There were no signs the couple was packing up and preparing for a move. The refrigerator was still stocked with food. There were few, if any, boxes packed with belongings. It did not look like anybody was planning to go on a long vacation, let alone moving out of the house.
Just seems like you're kind of Put yourself against the clock. If you knew this train was coming, you kind of get ready. Yeah, the significant part of it is the whole thing. We're pretty crippled by it.
Nick told us that Heidi was very aware of that situation and that she and him kept it a secret. When we talked to the family, they could not believe that their house was being foreclosed on and Heidi hadn't told a soul. The issue becomes, why did Heidi tell her family?
Beyond the embarrassment, is it possible that there was another reason that Nick and Heidi kept this secret?
Nick and Heidi had a very traditional marriage from the standpoint of the church. Nick, being the male, took care of the finances. Heidi took care of some of the plans and vacations and those types of things.
She deferred to Nick for all the financial issues.
At some point, you asked Nick a pretty critical question.
Yeah.
What'd you ask him?
I asked him if he killed her. I came out and asked him straight up. If for me, I said, ask you this question. Do you have anything to do with this? No, absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. All right. Why is it about it? Yes. Well, Nick, I'm a police officer. Yeah, you gotta ask tough questions, all right?
After this 3+ hour interview with police, Nick finally gets to see his family. What happened when he finally was reunited with his family?
He gave his mother a hug. Nick finally broke down and started crying, weeping openly.
Police camped out in front and back of the Firkins home throughout the day, collecting fingerprints and doing ballistic work.
We are investigating this as some type of burglary and intrusion.
Police have increased patrol in the neighborhood and say there's no evidence that anyone's trying to target this neighborhood.
After Nick's interview, I think that there was some red flags.
Based on some of the questions that police asked Nick, Nick realizes that the police are looking at him and he's going to need to protect himself.
I said, Nick, you can't go back and talk to him again. They wanted to do a sketch with a police sketch artist.
They had produced a very detailed sketch. We received a call. She said, Sergeant Peterson, I know who's in that sketch. I stopped everything. I couldn't believe it.
The resemblance between that individual and the sketch, it's undeniable.
We had maybe found our guy.
Heidi's funeral took place at our church about a week after her death. The entire sanctuary, all the seats were filled with people that were there because they loved Heidi.
I remember having Nick and just saying, I'm just so sorry. I can't imagine what it's like to be you right now. It was overwhelming. There's a lot of very vivid memories about it. When Nick spoke, he talked about her being an artist and thanking her parents for entrusting her to him.
Nick was seen as a victim and a hero. He had done everything he could to protect Heidi.
In the aftermath of Heidi's death, Nick does finally share with his family and with hers the financial secret he says they've been hiding.
The day after Heidi's death, Nick Firkus and his parents met with Heidi Firkus' parents and laid out the financial struggles, the credit card debt, the foreclosure.
John Erickson, Heidi's dad, was trying to project strength and say, they'll find this person, Nick, don't worry. And Nick's response was just, they'll never find him.
And that really caught Heidi's parents off guard, as did the details about the home foreclosure, which were now making headline news and have people questioning how much did Heidi really know about their financial problems.
The newspaper ran the story about financial disaster that Nick and Heidi were in, and that was the first that I was hearing about it. I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Nick was very quick to say, don't read the media, don't listen to the news, they're lying.
I didn't view him as somebody who would lie to me.
The friends were worried about Nick, perhaps he was being unfairly targeted.
But those close to Nick aren't just concerned about the media. The police were also zeroing in on him.
There's a lot of things.
My name is Joe Friedberg. I got a call from Nick's dad, who said that we have a problem. Can we come see you? I was retained very early on as his defense lawyer.
Nick Fergus seemed to be the victim of a horrible crime. His wife is dead. Why would he need a defense lawyer?
Well, the interview that day with the police, which he gave voluntarily, the questions took a turn.
Do you have anything to do with this?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. He was bright enough to know that he had gone from victim to a suspect.
Nick and his attorney decided that they weren't going to give any more statements to St. Paul police.
I told him that if he was going to have me represent him, he wasn't going to talk to the police to be a fool to.
It kind of seemed like Nick was being a little bit of an obstacle.
They claimed they wanted to bring him in and have him do a sketch with a police sketch artist. That's a good idea, but I knew they'd use that as a lever to try and interrogate him. So I said, no, we won't do that, but we'll hire an artist and do it.
I received a phone call from Nick Fergus's defense team. I agreed to have Nick come to my house. He had jotted down some notes. The skull and the ears were covered by a black hoodie. The eyes were well done. He said there should be a little bit more age to them. So I made them deeper looking and asked him, does that represent what you saw? And he said it was.
They were going to come down to our headquarters because we still needed to get a sample of Nick's DNA. And then when Nick showed up, that's when we were given the sketch of this alleged intruder. It was a picture of a African-American male, perhaps late 30s, 40s, wearing a hooded sweatshirt with a very, very round face and a larger nose.
They've never had that experience where a defendant hired his own sketch artist and they were stopped without any context of how this sketch was made.
An intruder was our best possible theory. We all wanted to find that hooded sweatshirt wearing individual who did this to Heidi.
The police released that sketch through the media to see if any tips would come in.
The composite sketch got a couple of leads, but nothing concrete. And then as the years passed, along the anniversary of Heidi's murder, the police and the news media would re-release that sketch.
If you know anything about this incident,
I did a lot of media pushes with some of our local reporters and others. At least one person knows exactly what happened, and we are hoping that that person or someone else will come forward. It revived the case, it revived the sketch, it revived the information, and it brought some more hope to Heidi's family.
Just the loss of our daughter alone is something that's going to be with us forever.
We received a call. The woman had left a voicemail, and she said, I know who's in that sketch. His name is Michael Pye. I stopped everything. I went into our database computer, and I typed in Michael Pye, and I couldn't believe it.
The resemblance between that individual and the sketch, it's undeniable.
We started researching him immediately, and we started to learn that he was engaged in a pattern of breaking into homes in St. Paul around 6 in the morning. And we had maybe found our guy.
my name is Michael Pye. I've been here for about 35 years. In 2010, I was a different person. My mind was gone. And I basically was homeless. So I basically was doing what I knew to survive. It was a home invasion. And that's what I was doing with home invasion.
I went to talk to Michael Pye to the Bureau of Corrections where he was being housed, and we met with him. I showed him the sketch. He said, that's me.
And
They said that it was a guy who said that I shot his wife in the back. And I said, I ain't do anything like that.
I hit a giant snag.
Problem is that individual was incarcerated when Heidi was killed.
Michael Pine was in jail on the day that Heidi was killed.
I got locked up on January the 1st. The murder happened in April. So it was like 3 months apart.
There was no way that he could have possibly been involved in this case whatsoever.
Investigators thought they were finally making progress, but now they're back to square one. For his part, Nick Fergus is moving on with life, even dating somebody new, somebody who's about to become his second wife. I am Rachel Fergus, and what she has to say will breathe new life into this investigation.
I want people to hear the full story and to know the truth of what really happened.
In 2010, when Heidi was murdered, I was a patrol officer and I worked in the district that she was killed in. And so I was aware of the crime from day one. I heard about it from other responding officers who talked about how the scene did not make sense. The case always bothered me because the circumstances didn't seem to fit what happened. A burglar broke into an occupied house. There was a struggling wife dies. Oh wait, they're getting evicted the next day? Heidi was killed in the place she should have been safest. And with the person who should have kept her safe. As the details piled on, I wanted to know what I didn't know. What am I missing? I think there was always a frustration within the department this case couldn't be solved. When I came into the homicide unit in 2018, the case was then assigned to me.
Our investigators held this case so close to their hearts. It was never considered a closed case.
It was very clear to the investigators that his family and all the friends rallied in support of him.
There was kind of two sides to this through the years. You have a group in the community and Heidi's family that were just extremely suspicious of him. You had a group of his friends and his family that were very much supportive of him as a hero in this.
It goes on with his life, and he's able to move on.
A few months after Heidi's murder, Nick meets the sister of a really good friend of his and Heidi's, Rachel Watson.
For the very first time, Nick Fergus's second wife, Rachel, is sitting down to tell her story. What'd you think of Nick Fergus?
I felt bad. I knew about his story. He had lost his wife. I had a ton of empathy.
What did you know about his story?
There was a burglar that entered their home. He fought with them. He was trying to fend them off, and Heidi was shot. And he also got shot.
Rachel shares that she left a very difficult marriage, and she moves back to Minnesota to be with her sister. And that's where she connects.
I definitely felt sorry for him that he had gone through such a trauma. I related to trauma. My first husband and I got married. It was a rough marriage. I was very quiet. I was scared, abused, and vulnerable. See, I figured if you took time to help heal each other, that's what it felt like. He listened and he empathized with me.
Within a year, Rachel and Nick are now talking about getting married.
You invest in something emotionally when you process something so hard.
Did you question how fast you could
Yeah, how fast were you then friends were supporting Heidi and things moving on?
All of it is like, you got her word.
It seems like he hasn't fully grieved his wife, and at the same time, we want him to be happy. So we made ourselves okay with the situation.
As Nick and Rachel are getting closer, Nick's family, who've always been very protective of him, especially after Heidi's murder, is now concerned, will people be critical that it's just too soon?
They were so pregnant and would mention that we have to be careful of how we talk about it and what we say, what we don't say.
When you say talk about it, the family was careful to talk about
Any of about what happened that day. I knew that if I was going to be in their family, that I wasn't allowed to share with anybody anything that I knew.
Rachel says she and Nick decided to focus on making new memories as a couple, starting with their wedding. So as time went on and you two were planning this wedding, your sister Sarah wrote on a family blog, "I've got to watch him be married once to one of my best friends who passed away. He was incredible with Heidi. I don't have to wonder what he's going to be like with Rachel. I trust him with all my heart." That was pretty strong endorsement of this man you're about to marry. Is that how you felt?
Everyone that I was around at the time felt that way.
Before the wedding, you had a special request. You wanted to visit Heidi's grave. Why?
Out of respect. I didn't want it to seem like I was replacing her, because I wasn't. I knew I would never replace her. I wanted to be able to go there and say that.
Tell me about that visit. What was that like?
It was strange. Nick didn't have much to say or have emotions about it. I envisioned it to be that he was protecting himself. I imagined it was tough, having to relive a trauma that you had in your life, and I didn't want to cause more hurt.
In August of 2012, Rachel and Nick get married. They start planning a family, and Rachel begins to grow closer with some of Nick and Heidi's friends.
My friendship took off with Rachel, like right away. She just became someone that I loved talking with. They had kids pretty quick, so we fell in love with their kids and would watch their kids for them when they were doing things.
What kind of a dad was Nick?
He was a good dad. It didn't necessarily come natural, but he tried.
Nick continues to be the main provider for his family, still working for his family's business. And Rachel says he tells her that he's no longer in debt.
He went through a program that helped him with finances, and he was able to pay off all of the debt that he had. So I respected that.
They moved into a house that Nick's parents paid for.
Neither of us were able, credit-wise, to buy a house. We had an agreement. We were paying our mortgage to them. When it was time to pay the property taxes, he was just supposed to pay it with the money that we had, and it seemed to be fine. I was happy.
But then, one day, Rachel finds something in Nick's sock drawer that literally took her breath away. What did you think?
Terrified. I didn't know that this was happening, and I'm living with this person. It was a very shocking realization.
Could history be repeating itself? What could possibly be more terrifying and traumatic than having someone break into your house early in the morning and shoot your wife dead and shoot you? Oh wait, you're being victim. What am I missing? He's talking about the gun being Chester. He says that, but they're fighting over the gun up here. Nick Fergus is under suspicion for his wife's murder.
It's just really traumatic to watch that all play out and to see people say things about your friend that aren't true. The last time he had problems with finances, a lot of things went wrong.
His wife was killed, right? How do you go from having financial troubles to killing your wife?
I didn't know what was going to happen in that conversation. The fact that you're lying over and over and over makes me think
Maybe somebody really did break in. Maybe it happened as he said.
little did I know that was not even crossing over.
Rachel, you need to get out of the house.
Time is not your friend in homicide cases. And as time went on, people start to move on and people don't want to talk about it anymore and people don't want to come forward anymore.
This is one of those cases that would wake you up at night and think about how are we going to bring justice to Heidi's family.
They would call in April, around the anniversary of her murder. They would call Heidi's birthday, and I know that it was absolutely traumatic.
Initially, it was only Nicholas Fergus's narrative that was out there. Friends rallied around him. They supported him. They all stuck with him. The family, the church community. Every single piece of the story that he told us then has been consistent and remains consistent with the evidence.
Any hard thing that he's gone through, we've walked alongside each other.
There was absolutely no way that he had been involved.
No, not a thought at all. How would that even cross people's minds? We were like, nobody thinks that. They know Nick.
Still, there were details that stuck with investigators. One of them was the sketch released that was based on Nick's description of the intruder.
It's clear that Michael Pye didn't kill Heidi because he was in prison at the time of the murder. Now, police thinking is, where did Nick come up with that thought for the composite?
In the winter months of 2009 and 2010, that man's face was all over the news as a home burglar in the area.
I could always turn on the news in the morning time, and I would be the first picture on the news on all stations.
It appears like that sketch could have been made deliberately to throw people off. It kind of seemed like Nick was trying to set someone else up, to try to frame another human being. That was disgusting. And that isn't the sign of an innocent man's actions. I was the lead investigator on over 85 some homicide cases, and I still have moms and family members that call me, and they still say, what's going on with this case? And Nick never called one time. He never reached out one time.
Why wasn't he working harder over the years to try to find his wife's killer? Maybe pressing the police, coming back to the police to find out what they know?
Blame that on me. I didn't want any more contact with the police for Nick because all they were trying to do is get inconsistent statements on details from him. No criminal lawyer worth his salt would ever let Nick cooperate with the police because the police were treating him as a suspect, not a victim.
But your wife has been killed by some unknown assailant, and over the years, I would think that that would just, at the very least, trouble him.
He was always concerned about it. Always afraid that walking down the street someday he'd run into him.
Nick has moved on with his life. He's married, has 3 kids, is working. And, it's as if he's been able to get past that really traumatic part of his life.
So you've been married now a few years. Was there any talk about the fact that there was never a resolution to this tragedy that had happened and nobody arrested for killing his wife?
No. I asked him about it and I said, why don't you ever talk about it? And he didn't really have anything to say. Rachel shares that she and Nick started to grow apart.
We were living in the same house, under the same roof, using, the same money, but there was no relationship anymore. There was, times where I felt like he was lying, but I could never prove it.
What did you suspect that he was lying about?
At first it was little things. I would see wrappers and, things in his car, and I'm like, hey, can you bring stuff from home so that we're not spending money every day on, going out to eat? But there was always an excuse for, somebody was in my car with me today and they left it in there. You're lying to me and it's dumb. Like, it's not even things that are a big deal.
Were you worried at all about how the finances were being handled?
Yeah. When you get collections calls, something's wrong.
One day, Rachel finds something in Nick's sock drawer that literally took her breath away. It was a notice that they were delinquent on the property taxes.
He failed to pay those taxes. If these taxes aren't paid, the county will look at foreclosure on the house.
What did you think?
Terrified. I didn't know that this was happening, and I'm living with this person. I have children with this person, and the last time he had problems with finances, a lot of things went wrong.
Is his wife was killed.
Right. And so, naturally, that's where I went. Is that what this is?
So you're beginning to think that you could be married to a killer.
Yeah, at this point, it was very possible. This piece of paper Rachel finding hidden from her proved to us enough that Heidi did not know about the financial struggle because Rachel did not know. That is when we were like, did he kill his wife?
She gets so scared that she grabs the kids in the middle of the night and she leaves the house.
At around the same time, there's a new detective determined to crack this case.
I think she hit the ground running.
And she finds more suspicious evidence that seems to point back to Nick Fergus, including something found in his car on the day of the murder.
Why would it be there?
This case had sat quiet for almost a decade. And then in 2019, there was a sergeant at the St. Paul Police Department who wants to take another look at this case.
I was transferred to the homicide unit, and I had an opportunity to take this case over from the previous investigator.
There have been no arrests, no progress, and almost 10 years have passed, and most people have forgotten about it. Where do you begin?
At the beginning, I reviewed all of the reports, I reviewed all of the evidence.
One of the first things that Sergeant Sykes does is to sit down and rewatch that interview that Nick Fergus did with police.
That was the single most important piece of evidence that I thought we had in this case.
Sykes now brings fresh perspective to a number of red flags that original investigators had noticed.
Heidi's only dead a few hours, and for the most part of this interview, Nick
Isn't crying, isn't emotional.
She was hitting the bad guys. He was hiding the bag probably. I got torches from the logistics.
How worried was he about his wife during that interview?
he wasn't. It took him about an hour and 20-some minutes to say, can I get an update on Heidi? And then Sergeant Gray was able to deflect the question for quite a while. And then Sergeant Gray asked him, do you have any questions?
Well, this is, there's no part of my job that really, this is really she did not. I
figured that. That was his response to the news. It was quite this time.
Oh, she didn't make it. Oh, I figured that.
It does appear
Okay. No
Still,
emotion.
Sykes says there's something important she never sees.
You would think that if your wife had just been killed in front of you by a real person who was on the loose, you would ask the questions of the investigator. What are you doing to find this person? Where did you look? Nothing.
Sergeant Sykes then turns to the FBI to comfort Heidi's unsolved murder.
We were initially contacted by Detective Sykes from the St. Paul Police Department to help with some audio from the 911 calls that they had.
We really wanted to hear if you could hear this suspicious intruder.
The FBI took the audio recording to a laboratory in Quantico. There was no noise that we could detect in the background.
You could hear the shots. And violence.
And in that last terrible moment of Heidi's life, investigators analyzing the call say there's nobody else there but Heidi and Nick. Next, the FBI is using new technology to reconstruct Heidi's final moments. But even before they begin, there are plenty of red flags in Nick's version of the story.
He has a loaded shotgun, and he he was not. Yes, he's the one that has the gun.
Why does he let his wife go ahead? She's maybe a foot ahead of him. They're together. And he's trying to hurry her along. They want her to get out of there.
Still, it's just not making sense to investigators. So the FBI now brings in its forensic firepower to help.
One of the things we came up with was to recreate this scene. So we decided that we were going to get access to the house.
The FBI came out and did a full digital scan that confirms the that they contain accurate detail digital model.
It tells in the interview about how the gun is sort of pressed up against his chest when it goes off and Heidi gets hit by it.
He's talking about the gun being used.
No, not now. Not now.
Their ballistics testing the virtual model of space to find out.
We put her in a natural position, which is her standing straight up. We were able to take somebody that's at the height of Nick Fergus and put that shotgun in space where it would be when it went off.
They believe that shows that the gun wasn't in Nick's chest as he describes. Instead, it was higher at his shoulder level, as a shotgun would normally be if you're going to aim and fire.
Which makes them think this is a deliberate shot and not a shot that was taken in the middle of a stroke. Though Nick's attorneys insist that doesn't necessarily disprove his version of events. Another thing that catches the attention of Sergeant Sykes is that Nick, in this interview, talks about this vacuum for cleaning up that specializes in removing blood. This is under Nick just happens to have that personal car on the day of Heidi's murder.
I'm working the Afghan stitch. Okay.
What did that say to you?
Well,
Doing squares.
it was always an idea to us that Taylor and Hillary played the scene.
Even as Sergeant Sykes is closing in on Nick Fergus, what she doesn't know is that his current wife Rachel is having her own suspicions that will lead her to begin secretly recording him.
And the fact that your line was so easy for you to do makes me think.
When Rachel found the papers that said that their house was in danger of foreclosure, was shocking. That was the first moment that we were like, oh my gosh, did he kill Heidi? That paper changed the course of the rest of the story.
What did you think?
Terrified. I didn't know this. I didn't know that this was happening, and here I am sitting in a position that happened before to him.
The last time his wife ended up dead by his shotgun. And so, Rachel, you need to get out of the house and keep yourself safe.
Did you fear for your life? There were times that I did, for sure. With knowing that he could do it once, what makes you think he can't do it again?
Once Rachel knows that her children are safe and away from Nick, she decides she's going to confront him.
Rachel was feeling nervous about her safety, so she brings her friend Emily along. You decided you wanted to record the conversation.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I didn't know what was going to happen in that conversation, and possibly, maybe there'd be a confession of some sort.
And how did you secretly record the conversation?
I just had my phone next to me on my lap, and the conversation started. I could get through this if it was just a line. I really could. The problem is the Heidi stuff. That's my problem. The problem is I don't 100% believe you. I said I found out about possible foreclosure. I found out that you haven't been paying bills, that you've been lying about paying these bills. And then, I said, how am I supposed to know this information and not think that you may have had something to do with Heidi's death?
from me and it's shocking. Trust me, it's shocking for me to think it.
Nick sits there, silent, not saying a word. This goes on for minutes.
We're like, why are you not getting help? Clearly there is a problem. There's a history of a problem. The fact that you're lying was so easy for you to do in front of me over and over and over makes me think that you could lie about something. Yes. And then when you ask him, like, to talk about Heidi's death, he just puts his head down and, like, kind of cries, but he will not touch it. Are you ready to say more? Now Rachel insists that Nick tell his parents what's going on, so they get together again, and he brings them along. You were putting him sort of on a hot seat at the time with the parents. You wanted him to come clean, yeah. And did he? No. He sat there and let his dad talk for him. If Heidi didn't know all this was happening, why was there nothing packed in their house? Like, that's just the logical.
There was the beginning of the packing, and there was not amazing that was packed up. There was things that were pretty easily ready to go. Yeah. Like right in that first flush, it didn't look like a house packed.
You look at the videotape taken by police on the day of the murder, that does not look like a house that was prepared for a big move out.
You hear Rachel challenging Nick's parents, asking, how is it possible that you had no idea that Nick was losing the house?
There is no way that's just so about me.
So we were super intertwined thinking like that Mark's grandchildren are involved and the actual is a more connection.
But that was different from their theory. But they said that they were shocked that they didn't know.
Nick's dad tells Rachel that their lawyer has advised the family not to speak publicly about Heidi's death.
Okay, Boo Boo.
Challenges Nick about his memory. He says that a lot of stuff is fuzzy.
When we talked about it, it was like details of what happened. You keep saying that, but that's not true.
She didn't trust him anymore, so she decided to divorce, and they did divorce in 2018.
I knew immediately as soon as I saw the divorce, I wanted to talk to her.
One day, I get a knock on my door. I think it's somebody that's selling me something. She was like, I'm Nikki Syson from St. Paul Police Department. I want to talk about Heidi Firkus. And I never in a million years thought that would happen.
The idea that Rachel was married to Nick Firkus, he's the father of her children. She cooperated with you. That's pretty amazing.
She's a very brave woman.
How much danger was she potentially in?
That's a great question. But if I were her, I wouldn't be very afraid when I found this out.
You're potentially helping them arrest your children's father for murder. Were you at all reluctant?
No matter how hard this is going to be, this is someone's daughter. And if I can fight for her, even if it causes pain for me, I will.
If Nick really did kill Heidi, then what's the motive? Police finally believe they have enough evidence to make them leave.
Police! We got a search warrant?
Sergeant Nikki Sipes is still investigating the murder of Heidi Fergus. And more than ever before, she is focused like a laser beam on her former husband, Nick.
She's beginning to believe that the motive for Heidi's murder all stems from the couple's financial troubles.
At the time of Heidi's death, they haven't made a mortgage payment in 22 months. They're $18,000 in debt with credit card bills.
What struck me the most was the amount of money that they had in overdraft fees through their bank. In 1 year, it was over $8,000 in overdrafts.
In overdraft alone,
In overdrafts. I mean, their water was going to be disconnected at times. It appears that they were living way above their means.
Rather than cook at home, they were out at restaurants.
No barking.
Lavish places.
Thank you.
But they were spending more than they were making.
but it was their $200,000 home that was really causing Nick and Heidi to fall behind.
They bought a home they could not afford. And so things kind of spiraled a little bit because of that. And the day after Heidi's murder is the day they were supposed to be evicted by the sheriff.
Sergeant Sipes and the FBI poured through the financial documents and come up with a theory, which you'll tell me after sifting through all of this.
That Heidi had no idea their house had been foreclosed on. She had no idea they were being evicted 30 hours later. Nick says that it was their secret, but the police wonder if maybe it was a secret that only Nick was keeping.
How is it possible that they could be living together and she has no idea that they're in financial trouble?
Easy.
Finances. They were young. That just seemed to be the rule that he took on.
But Nick's defense lawyers see it differently.
They were being hounded by the bank, by Mail, by UPS, by Federal Express. There were postings on the door, and all of those mailings were found in the house. Heidi could not have been oblivious to what was going on.
In the mortgage and eviction paperwork, there was never anything signed by Heidi Fergus.
You didn't see her signature on any of these documents.
Nowhere.
No one ever served Heidi Fergus with a piece of mail. She never appeared at the hearing for the eviction. She didn't communicate with anyone, not even her closest friends, not even her parents, about this situation.
Whenever we spoke to any one of her friends, our family, would Heidi have told you? Every single person said absolutely she would have.
And not only was Heidi not talking about this looming move with her friends and family, according to the police, when they dug through her text messages and her emails, it didn't appear that she had discussed it with Nick either.
What we couldn't find anywhere in any of the emails was any mention whatsoever of foreclosure or eviction.
I mean, that's a life-changing event when you have to move out of your house. And for them not to have one correspondence about the coordination of this move is very suspicious. Now, the closer it got to the day of her death, you could tell she knew something was going on with a few of the bills.
She started getting calls and emails from creditors asking about bills that need to be paid.
Every time she would get a call, she would immediately call, text, or email Nick and ask him to take care of it. She was definitely asking more and more about bills. Like, I got a call about this. She would ask him, is there any update? And he would give her these kind of elongated responses, like, oh, I called so-and-so. And so it became very clear that she believed what her husband told her. Police thinking is, Nick is not telling Heidi the truth. So why is he lying to Heidi? I think he knew that as soon as Heidi knew what happened, she would tell everyone around him. He thought she might leave him.
So rather than reveal his financial problems, he killed his wife.
He has destroyed their lives, essentially, without her knowing. Prosecutors say Nick was two different men. He was one man at church for his wife and his family and community, and then there was the secret Nick. The Nick that couldn't pay his bills, the Nick who was losing his house. It wasn't just going to be the loss of his house. It was going to be the realization that he had lied to his wife, that he had lied to his friends, he had lied to the community for many years. Through the murder of Heidi, he came away as
bring in the police because your wife has just been murdered.
After 11 years, police finally believe that they have enough evidence to make their move against Nick Fergus. We went to his house very early in the morning. Response team knocked on the door.
Police department, search warrant! Nothing on his hands. Hello? Police! We got a search warrant? Nick, come on over. Yeah. Go put your hands behind your back for me. Okay.
Very fine.
You have a warrant for your arrest, sir?
Nicholas Fergus is in custody on suspicion of murdering his wife Heidi.
Today, we're one step closer to getting justice for Heidi. And the truth.
Do you think that he thought that he would ever be arrested? No, I believe you probably got a good one.
Nick is charged with both first-degree and second-degree murder.
I thought that was it. I thought, okay, he's gonna go to jail. Little did I know that it was not even close to being over.
The trial for a St. Paul man accused of killing his wife back in 2010 is now underway.
His attorneys are arguing that Nicholas's wife Heidi was killed during a break-in, but Ramsey County prosecutors say there's no sign of anyone else in the home other than the couple.
It's been nearly 13 years since Heidi Fergus's murder, and the trial for her husband Nick is now underway at this courthouse. And both sides are arguing completely different versions of what happened that morning.
The apartment was packed every single day. There were people who were sitting on the floor even.
The tension between the two parties.
Was family against another family.
No. Let me get them. Lulu.
At the heart of this case,
No barking.
was there an
No barking.
It wasn't a fictitious stranger who was breaking into her home.
Lulu.
It was the stranger she married.
To prove their argument, prosecutors put Nick's intruder story to the test. They showed the jury video of police trying to reenact the break-in and the jiggling of the door Nick says he heard from the upstairs bedroom.
Nick's attorneys introduced evidence to contradict that, showing the two
Okay,
marks
Lulu,
on
it's
the
enough.
door frame that suggest someone was trying to break in.
There were marks on the door that were consistent with someone using a screwdriver to pry open the door. Maybe somebody really did break in. Maybe it happened as he said. And the police recognized that, which is why they seized 3 screwdrivers from the house and from Heidi and Nick's cars and compared them to the tool marks, and none of the 3 screwdrivers could be matched to those tool marks.
You brought in a locksmith.
He did.
What did you discover?
He's mentioned thousands of burglary scenes. He said his experience has been that with a burglar, you're going to attack the deadbolt, because once you get the deadbolt, you're not doing it.
But there was no evidence that anybody had tried to pry open the deadbolts.
And he also said they don't care about damage. All they care about is getting in and getting it fast.
The locksmith had never seen a burglary with so little damage.
And yet, nobody was out. Why isn't the table knocked over? Why are the contents still neatly on that table?
Because that isn't where the struggle was. The struggle was as you come into the door to the right of there, as is shown by the spread of the bullets into the door. Look, 4 cops came bursting through that door into the house because of the emergency, and the stuff was still there.
But they weren't fighting with them over gun.
The scene was not trashed, but there were things that were askew. The front door was open an inch when the police arrived. The front mat was pushed up against the wall. Heidi's shoes were sort of knocked askew.
Another reason prosecutors believe that there was never an intruder is because they never found anyone else's DNA. No foreign DNA in the house or on the gun.
So what did that tell you?
That there was one person who touched the gun. And for us.
The guy came in fully dressed with a hood over his head and wearing gloves. He was in the house for seconds.
Probably wouldn't be an ADME.
The defense argues that Nick wouldn't have had enough time after Heidi's 911 call to stage the crime scene and shoot himself before making his own 911 call only 65 seconds later. Prosecutors know they've got to convince the jury that there was plenty of time, and in their closing argument, they put on a dramatic demonstration. Show me how you do the reenactment.
I demonstrated with my hands being in shooting stance to represent it for his whole shotgun.
So that would have been Nick shooting his wife.
That's correct. I put down my imaginary gun. I walked over to where Heidi's body would have been. Nick Fergus would have turned her over.
With the timer running in front of the jury, prosecutor Rachel Crocker walks through every step she says Nick had to take.
Picked up the gun that he left by the door, braced himself against the door, and then pulled the trigger to get that tangential wound that he got in his left leg.
Shooting himself.
Drop the gun, and needed to call 911.
And you still had time on the clock?
That's right.
There's no evidence that he was able to walk. He had just been shot in the thigh. You take a look at the pictures of that wound, he would have had to crawl.
Jurors have heard the case for just over 2 weeks, and now Nick Fergus's future is in their hands.
There was a likelihood that the jury would believe Nick's story.
So was it possible that Nick would walk away with free men? The case of a St. Paul man accused of killing his wife back in 2010 could go to the jury as soon as today. Nick Fergus is under suspicion for his wife's murder. His trial has just ended, but the jury comes back in 4 hours with their verdict. St. Paul man has been found guilty of killing his wife.
A jury convicted Nicholas Fergus of first and second degree murder.
When you heard guilty, what'd you think?
Devastated. I had to hold Nick. He started to sob.
Nick Fergus's family declined our request for an interview, but sent us a statement saying they support their son and believe in his innocence.
Nicholas Fergus was finally held accountable. We wanted to do justice to Heidi, and we thought we had done that.
On April 13th, the emotion in the courthouse is palpable.
Yeah, there's justice, but that doesn't make things better.
There are people still affected by this mess.
Nick Fergus is back in the courtroom for sentencing.
You may be seated. The way I'd like to proceed is allow the victim statements.
I really miss my sister, although it is lighter knowing the fight for the truth of her story has been won.
I know that Heidi was put in my life to bring me closer to God. It isn't fair that she's gone. Nick Fergus has had 13 years to live the life that Heidi deserved.
And finally, this is an opportunity for you, Mr. Fergus, to make a statement.
I do maintain and will maintain to my dying breath my innocence of this crime. These past 13 years have not diminished my love for her nor the love that I felt from her.
This was a tragic event, and there are no winners here. But the jury has spoken. It is the sentence of law and judgment of this court that you be committed to the Commission of Corrections for the remainder of your life, without the possibility of release.
Just knowing what the world is robbed of, that someone is bright and just special is lost. It's tragic to think about.
And remember the man who looked just like the guy in the composite sketch, Michael Pye? Well, he has turned his life around after serving time, and he wonders how differently things could have gone for him.
If I would have been locked up, I would have got found guilty for it because wouldn't nobody believe it if I told him that it wasn't me. I most definitely forgive him for what he tried to do. I also know in forgiveness, it's a price you're going to have to pay too. And so he's going to have to go to prison and pay that price now, you know?
I often get shocked by my own story. Not many people can say, yeah, I married a murderer, didn't know, had kids with him. There are moments when I'm
Are you okay? I'm falling off the sofa. Are you okay?
but I also know that I would have those 3 kids without it.
Okay.
Without the story that I have.
Okay. When doing the Afghan stitch, it curls. So there's a lot of straightening out to do there. This is the back. What I'm going to do, let me measure it. And I think we're done with this for now.